What is a blockchain? So, a blockchain is a globally shared data structure, transactional backend database. When we talk about Bitcoin, for example, it's called a ledger essentially. This means that everyone can read entries in the database just by participating in the network. If you want to change something in the database, you have to create a so-called transaction, which has to be accepted by all others. So the way to look at it is essentially a quorum. The word transaction implies that the change you want to make is either not done at all or completely applied. So in parentheses there, assume you want to change two values at the same time. What we mean by that is essentially this. You have in a blockchain, essentially you're writing two blocks, basically bits and blocks. Basically, if that block is being written to by more than one node, then that transaction should be non-repeatable. In other words, that block should only allow one node essentially to write to that. That would be non-repeatable. Now, what happens if two nodes try to write to that same block at the same time? Like maybe that would be an example of creating what's called a redundant transaction, for example. That would be a reputable transaction, and we don't want those. And so the blockchain is set up to prevent that. So when a transaction is written to, it should not be altered. That's non-repeatable. Timestamped and full history. So for example, you go back into the blockchain, the ledger, and actually view transactions and view the history, view the wallets, or whatever the application is that you're using, to be able to determine who was sending what and who did what. Blockchain is to Bitcoin what the internet is to email. A big electronic system on top of which you can build applications. Currency is just one. Now, this quote is courtesy of Sally Davies of FT Technology Reporting. And she basically summed it up pretty nicely. Blockchain essentially is the platform, and Bitcoin is essentially the currency that runs on the blockchain. And so if we think of internet and email, we all understand that the internet is not just email, it's actually more than that. Email works on top of the internet, which the internet is the platform for email to essentially work. Blockchain's decentralized, open, and cryptographic nature allows people to trust each other and transact peer-to-peer, making the need for intermediaries obsolete. Well, again, this is a very important characteristic of a blockchain. This is a peer-to-peer approach. There is no middleman. So, for example, if we talk about sending money overseas, one of the biggest challenges with sending money overseas is not that you can't do it, but you have a lot of fees to do that, and it's not exactly an easy process. The SWIFT network is a very difficult a process to send money, especially overseas. And it's very expensive. Now, if we look at a blockchain and some of the exciting technologies that are coming out, will eliminate most of those fees. And not only that, it'll be a lot quicker as well, because the SWIFT network, again, is not exactly a very fast process in a lot of cases. Hacking attacks. Now, with hacking, basically, you have to think of it this way. So if you have a centralized approach, it's very common for a hacker to be able to target one area or one node if it's all centralized. In a decentralized network, that hacker would need to really have enough resources to be able to pull it off, in the sense that they would have to attack, in a typical blockchain, could be thousands of nodes, and this would be pretty difficult, and the resources to do that would be virtually impossible. Blockchain is disruptive technology around services that typically require intermediaries. So, for example, the SWIFT network. This is why a lot of the banks are jumping on board with Ethereum, for example, in a lot of cases, because Ethereum is a great platform to be able to develop a currency transfer or some kind of land transaction or some kind of contract-based service. So again, many possibilities there. So if you remove the intermediary, you lower the cost of providing a service. Smart contract, again, Ethereum, as I just spoke about.